notepad. Just wanted to make sure everyone could join and then we could just start on time. So welcome to another Cyber Lounge webinar. I'm joined today with Melina Phillips, CISSP, and we're going to be talking about OSCP, something which having talked to Melina in advance, I'm really excited about. I'm really excited to hear about this too. So Melina, if you could unmute yourself and if you want to introduce yourself as well.
Hey, awesome. Well, thank you all so much for giving me the opportunity to be here and share this with you guys. So my name is Melina, and I have a bachelor's degree in computer systems engineering. I've been in IT for a little bit over 7 years, and I'm really excited to be here.
Of course, I see quite a few people, Bradley, Gian, saying hi, so that's great. I think we can just kick things off. If you want to switch over to, we can switch over to your screen now. Are you ready?
Okay. Let me. Okay. Can you see my main screen?
Yep,
Okay.
there we go.
Perfect. So I'm gonna get started. This is just basically briefly what I was mentioning before. And I love it because most presentations start the same way with the typical who I am or whatever. Well, as I was mentioning, a senior security engineer with a little bit over 7 years of experience, red team enthusiast. So the beauty of being in this industry is that you don't necessarily get to play just one role. So you get to learn a little bit of everything and just kind of wear different hats from time to time. So that's definitely some cool stuff. Um, well, I kind of have a little mini alphabet soup in here: CCNA, SSCP, EJPT, CISSP, Splunk, and virtual hacking labs. Um, I'm really happy that I got my certifications, and I do consider them to be door openers from time to time, but certifications are not everything. Like getting a piece of paper saying that you passed a test should not be a make it or break it type of deal when it comes to finding a good opportunity. That's just my opinion. Another thing is like out of the certifications that I got, I feel like SSCP is my personal favorite because it was definitely a really good learning experience. And I feel like it was just what pretty much lead the way for me to start going into IT security. Experience on incident detection and response. So the cool part of being a blue teamer is that you kind of get to do a little bit of detective work with little pieces of information that you find. You get to put them all together and paint a picture. So that's definitely something really fun. Fun facts about me: my favorite color is pink. And when I was a kid, I was terrified of David Bowie and Mr. Clean. I know they're just like completely unrelated and random characters, but yeah, David Bowie just really scared me. He was just like all weird looking and colorful, and I'm pretty sure he was really talented and creative. But you know, like I saw his picture when I was a kid, and I was like, whoa, who is this guy? So that's me. If you are a blue teamer, why are you teaching me pen testing stuff? I've gotten this question so many times in previous jobs. Actually, this is the very first time, like with my current job, where I don't get it, where people don't ask me this question. But if you think about it for a second, if you really want to be able to defend an environment and really be able to protect it, or if you are not able to prevent an attacker from, you know, like getting into your environment, at least you want to be able to detect him, or you want to be able to temporarily stop him or make it a little bit trickier for him to, you know, like gather access to your stuff. So I've always thought that if you really want to think like an attacker, you have to learn what they do. Um, and I can't go to the next slide. Awesome. um, okay. Good stuff. Enough blabbering. What are we going to do here? So I wanted to do a little walkthrough that I know that a lot of younger professionals are really interested in getting their OSCP, and that's great. I honestly feel like it's a good certification to bypass the HR filter. If you personally ask me, I don't feel like it's something that resembles a real life engagement, but it's something that it's definitely going to get a recruiter's attention. So, reconnaissance, what's in your target? So we're going to look at our ports of a typical hacking challenges that we would find. Enumeration, nosy people make good pen testers. Why? Because any piece of information it's needed, we want to look into it. We want to see how we can use it. And, like just basically, just because we see a username or we see, I don't know, a hash or something that initially seems to be irrelevant, doesn't mean we're not going to need it later on. Exploitation, going for the kill. So we want to get an initial shell. And privilege escalation. I broke in, now what? So once you get initial access and just kind of like the crappy little terminal, we want to be able to get root or admin access for that matter. So I'm going to change to my Kali screen. So I was working on this challenge. This is for Proving Grounds. One thing that I wanted to clarify, under no circumstance you should ever disclose information that is proprietary or belongs to offensive security. This is really frowned upon. I am not disclosing any unauthorized information, so they wouldn't really have any issue if I'm disclosing anything that has to do with Proving Grounds. But you do not want to disclose information that belongs to their PWK class, I believe. The reason is because those machines kind of have, if I know this correctly, if you solve a certain amount of them, those points could be used or count towards your final grade. So we really don't want to be spoiling machines, or we really don't want to, like just do something that could potentially have a negative impact, not only for us, but for everybody else that wants to try to get their, like their OSCP certification. Plus, you want to make it challenging. You want people to learn. So that kind of defeats the purpose. So in here, we all know that initial scans take an eternity. So I kind of wanted to, well, I did my initial scan, but I wanted to show you guys how I started it. So I have this tool that is called Legion, and it's not typing. Beautiful. There it is. It's awesome when you're like live streaming and nothing comes out like the way you're expecting it. So it just kind of makes it fun, I guess. This is the second time in my life that I do a live stream. So anyway, so I just wanted to show you all the options really quick. This tool in particular really caught my attention because it's not a tool that is mentioned during the OSCP class from what I've heard, but it's also not a tool that is, it's not restricted, but it's not promoted. So I normally do the aggressive scan. I call it the Sofia Vergara scan because it's a little bit too loud, but it definitely, if you look at my final results, yes. So I'm just gonna exit. This is what I got. So I really want to start enumerating. I'm going to start enumerating my port 21, which is FTP. So I'm just going to do FTP, start in passive mode, 192.168.189.68. There it is. Okay, it's asking for credentials, and I obviously don't have them. But if I'm looking in here, it's giving me information. So Plus, you always want to try with anonymous access. There it is. You always want to check if you're able to log in with anonymous. So I'm enumerating what I could possibly find in this directory that I could use. Whoa. All right, FTP, chill out for a sec. Crazy. Anyway, so I'm looking. I can see that I definitely have a lot of information. Enumerating definitely is going to be interesting. So another thing that I want to see, I noticed in my initial scan that I have access to 2 HTTP ports. If my, like from previous experiences, I can see that it is possible to place a shell on FTP and then being able to trigger it via browser access. So I want to see if this is the same case. A good practice or something really good to do always is to keep a test file on your root, like folder in case you ever want to do something with it or you want to mess with permissions. So what I'm doing here right now is I want to test if I have write access into their FTP. So I'm going to do put test.txt. And it's telling me that it's denied. So I just want to show you guys the test file that I have. So this is just something really simple and random. But it doesn't matter anyway because I don't really have write access to FTP. So next thing to do, I guess, is just enumerating. I see a couple of applications that don't make a whole bunch of sense to me, but I also see that I have MySQL credentials in here. Well, a MySQL folder. So you always want to make sure that you look for anything that could potentially give you either a username or a password or a hash. I'm not saying not to use MySQL, but if this were to be database related, I would have a database port in here. And a very common practice is for, like lazy admins to just be reusing credentials. So this is something that I definitely want to keep in mind. But I also see RabbitMQ, so I kind of want to see what's in there. RabbitMQ. Okay, it changed. So what's in here? Erlang cookie. Okay, crazy. All right, so what I'm going to do, this doesn't seem to be making a whole bunch of sense to me right now. So the next thing that I want to do, I'm going to keep enumerating these 2 ports. So I'm going to enumerate port 15672 and port 80. So there it is. There, HTTP 192.168. If y'all ever see me looking up, it's kind of because I have a third monitor. That's the not so fun part of being 5'2". You just kind of have to look up. And anyway, my monitor is not placed in the best position, I guess. 199.68. So there it is. We're going to enumerate. And we also have another port, which is 1562. Same thing. Same song and dance. Okay, again, derb. HTTP 192.168.189.68. And then 15672. Okay, that's because I wasn't typing it correctly. This is what happens on live streams. You just kind of... Okay, now it's going to start enumerating. It doesn't... I don't want to say that we're not going to find anything interesting, but enumerations do certainly take a decent amount of time. So we're just kind of going to let it run for a sec, and we're going to look at anything else that we could potentially use. Well, I want to look at the service, so I'm just going to go to Firefox. This is a default page. So what's in here? RabbitMQ. And on our FTP, we notice that we have credentials. Well, we have a cookie for this. One common thing that I've seen, and I've seen it a lot on LinkedIn. I'm really not saying that it's bad, but it's definitely, I want to say that it's an interesting practice. I've seen a lot of professionals, and we're talking mostly CISOs and, like top-notch company leaders or something like that. They're saying that it's okay to just jump into IT security without any previous IT experience. I don't want to say that it's bad, but it's extremely challenging. And I'm going to tell you an example right now. Well, I was trying to enumerate, if it wasn't because I've done something before with this application, RabbitMQ, which is basically a message broker, this would make no difference to me. RabbitMQ is not a standard application that you would see installed in Linux, right? So you want to see what's out there that is looking a little bit more unusual than others. It's just kind of like Sesame Street, like one of these things is really not like the others. So what's popping out? What's really not matching what it's supposed to be, the ordinary pattern? So in this case, it's RabbitMQ and OS Prober. Okay, so we're going to continue with the enumeration and just kind of let Dirtbuster do its thing. And we want to look at this other port, Erlang port mapper. Okay, yes, we want to look at it. I want to say that our very next stop, if this doesn't seem to work, would be the unknown port. Again, I don't want to say don't ever not enumerate SSH. You want to get as much information as you can, but you also want to leave SSH as your very last resource. Here's why. Most SSH practices require you to be brute forcing, and you don't want to brute force right away. You want that to be your very, very last thing to do. If I were a security operations analyst and I saw somebody trying to brute force into a certain IP, I would be able to see that activity on my SIM. What would be the next thing to do? You would probably block the attacker IP, right? So again, I'm not saying that not to do it. I'm saying that it's really your very last choice. I'm not entirely sure in this case what this port mapper is. So I'm just gonna try to do it like the lazy way and just enumerate port mapper. Yeah, it's Erlang, not Erland. Nice. Okay, there is a way to enumerate it. This is the manual way, and this is the automatic way. Of course, we want to do it. I don't want to say the slacker way, but we want to be able to automate as much as possible. So now we're going to check what additional information we can get from this. So we're going to start enumerating 192.168.189.68. And then we're just kind of going to let the nmap run, like the nmap thing to do its scanning. Okay. We can see that this port is listed as unknown in here, but nmap is telling us it's Rabbit. I'm not entirely sure if I mentioned this before, but for RabbitMQ, this is a message broker application. So what a message broker is it kind of works as a middleman to communicate between among certain other applications that are related to it. And I'm just going to give y'all a very generic and weird example. CyberArk could be, this is just an example. This is a privilege account management solution. And if you want your privilege account management solution to communicate with your web server, since you're able to access it directly from web, and you want it to communicate with your database and with your distributed engine, and you want all those components to work together, that's when you would look for a message broker like that. So I want to look also at my scanning results, and it looks like I'm really not getting anything out of the ordinary. This is nothing to write home about. Server status and index are something that we're always going to see for the most part. There it is. Nothing crazy. So I'm just going to close this for now. And then this is the scan that I just completed. Again, this isn't anything super crazy. I've seen this before. These pictures. It's not holding anything. Open link. Yep, it's all blank, which tells us that we want to be looking a little bit more at this Erlang thing. Bingo, remote code execution. So we can link the authentication cookie. We will be able to execute code on the host. Usually this cookie is located here, which is what we just found in the FTP. So one thing to keep in consideration is it's extremely unlikely, unless you're just kind of getting started with hacking or like pen testing challenges, it's extremely, extremely unlikely that you get an application where you can just get your remote code execution right away. I mean, it happens, and for testing and educational purposes, it's a very common practice. But in real life, you normally want to combine different steps, and you want to enumerate as much as you can, because you don't really know if you're going to have a piece of information that you're going to be needing to use later on. So we got our cookie. Look, there's even a Metasploit module. So I'm going to go to exploit.db, and I'm going to look for an exploit. There it is. And again, we're looking at it. I noticed that this is a Metasploit exploit, and I'm so glad that we found it, because I want to talk about this. And a lot of people just kind of go like, oh, there she goes again. But those who know me, which is like a few people probably, know how I feel about automatic exploitation tools, and I always want to have a conversation about this. The industry tries to antagonize and demean and demoralize people who use automatic exploitation tools. My personal opinion is work smarter, not harder. And this is a little bit not that much different than, like saying, hey, I have electricity in my house, I'm going to use a candle. Or I want a sandwich, I'm going to make my own bread. I want tacos, I'm going to make my own tortillas with, like the corn dog and all that stuff. If there's a tool and there's a way to do it a little bit more efficiently, use that way. It doesn't make you a slacker, it doesn't make you stupid, it doesn't make you a bad professional. The tool is there for a reason. And another thing that it's a very common practice is saying, okay, you're using an automatic exploitation tool, you don't understand the exploit. And those are not two mutually exclusive things. You can use an automatic exploitation tool and have a perfect understanding of how the exploit works. Actually, I suggest you to have a really good understanding. Why? Because if you're ever in an actual client environment, you want to see and you want to be able to understand what you're doing and all the negative impact that it could potentially have. So, that being said, we're going to go for the manual exploit. I do see the irony on this, and I'm pretty sure you guys do too, but there it is. I should have made this a little bit more. Anyway. So we want to look at the exploit code so we have a better idea of what's going on in here. This is our target IP, which is that one, that IP that we found here. Port 25672. Cookie, which is the one that we found in our FTP, and command who am I. So this is probably just going to give us like, like who, what's the name of the computer. And this could easily be substituted by print working directory, or list all the files that you're, like currently seeing in your folder. Just any normal command that we would be running in Linux. So I had already just downloaded this exploit, but I wanted you guys to take a look at it. This is what I have. This is the cookie that I found, right? So the way we would normally get a cookie from that FTP server in this case, we're going to exit. We're going to log in one more time. We're going to access directly cd rabbit and q, and then we're going to list everything in our directory again. Okay, so we're going to do a get dot erlang cookie. It's been completed. And this is pretty interesting because I had somebody reaching out to me and telling me, hey, I did a get on the Erlang cookie and I don't see it. And this is something you just kind of have to keep your eyes open for. A lot of this type of files, since they start with a dot, it's going to come up as a hidden file. But this was actually downloaded. So if I do and it didn't download. Nice. Oh, it did. I don't know why I've been doing strings instead of cat. There it is. So the reason why I've been doing strings instead of cat, basically, and this is something that you're going to find more in a capture the flag type of environment, you want to use strings instead in case there's a hidden string of characters in a binary, right? This is something that I've never really seen in a more professional environment, but you're going to see it if you're playing like capture the flag, or I know Hack the Box is really good at that stuff. So just kind of, it's another option that you can use in case you want to check a binary if it's hiding strings. So this is the cookie that I got. We're going to close. And now back to the exploit. The command section was substituted by a Python shell. I'm pretty sure a lot of you already know this alternative, but if you want to find a really good shell that is always going to work for the most part, well, actually this has never failed for me. You want to look at GTFO bins. So this is basically the shell that I'm using. Anyway, well, not this too, but this is. So this is the shell that I'm using. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to run the exploit. I already have all the information that I want. I'm going to close this. I have people asking me, how come you never use Terminator? Find like a better way to just kind of put your terminal windows a little bit more, you know, like in order. I could never really get into it. And I was just like, okay, this is really not that much fun anymore. So, okay, we're going to try to run this exploit now. So it's Python 3 and then 495.418.py. And we want to open a listener. There it is. Awesome. Okay, one thing I wanted to show you guys, and this is something that I should have done before. A very common thing that you're going to see with offensive security, if you change a port, well, mostly if you want to use a listening port, and when I mean listening port is something that you want to use for your netcat, don't stick necessarily to 444 or 443 or 445. You want to look at what port options are being offered in here. And this is what you want to use for your listening port. In this case, I use 15672 because I know that this port was available in here. And if you're doing this in proving grounds, this is a very, very, very common practice. I wish somebody had mentioned this to me. I kind of had to guess that on my own. But you want to use as a listening port a port that is already listed here in your initial scan. I'm going to close this out because we kind of already know what we're doing. So when I exit, again, I'm going to close this. I'm going to run the exploit one more time. There it is. Okay, beautiful. So we have an initial shell. Oh, am I? RabbitMQ. Okay. But I'm not super convinced because we do have a shell, yes, but this is a restricted shell. There might be some commands that we might not be able to run, so I'm just going to try. Not found. Okay, awesome. So we want to get out of this restricted shell, right? So what I'm going to do in this case, I'm going to paste the command that I used to break out of the restricted shell. A lot of you guys are familiar with this, and I'm pretty sure that's the case. We're going to look again at our GTFO bins, and this is basically the same binary that I'm using here. This can be used to break out from a restricted environment by exploiting an interactive system shell, which is exactly what we just did in here. Okay, so we're going to try again. And it's still restricted. Awesome. Okay, we do have a limited user terminal. So the next thing to do now is we want to get root. So what are we going to do next? We want to go through a checklist of tasks that we would normally go for if we want to start escalating privileges. So there's two ways that you can do this. You can even go through the checklist, or we can have a script do that for us. So I'm going to copy a script right now. And I'm going to have that script automatically run and just tell us those very common checks, which is just what the same thing that we would do if we were manually trying to escalate privileges. Again, this is not an automatic exploitation or automatic privilege escalation script. This is just going to check the most basic things that you would have to do if you want to escalate privileges. Okay. So I'm going to do wget HTTP 192.168.49. I don't really know what my IP address is. Oh, there it is, 189. And then LSE. It copied it. Okay. Just a quick chat about this script in particular. Again, it's doing it. This is Linux Smart Enumerator. So what it does is just it checks for the most common tactics or the most common steps that you would take. It checks if there's any other users that are running on, like that also have terminal access. It checks if there are any other sudo users, or if it also checks if there are files that are running with root permissions that we could potentially have write access to. And if we have access to write a file, we can write anything that we want, even a reverse shell. So this is something really good to try. So if you want to check it out, last time that I checked, this particular script is not restricted by OSCP, because I know that they were a little bit, like dramatic about, I believe it was lean peas or something. I believe that was the one that they were all like Taylor Swift about, like, oh, you shouldn't be using that. And again, this is just something that, from what I heard, it's not restricted, and from what I've checked, it's not restricted. But if you want to take the test and you in the future just like, okay, this is a really good tool and I want to take it, I recommend that you check with them, because I swear these people change their minds more often than a teenager that's hanging out with somebody. So just make sure you're doing the right thing. Okay, so we're gonna run this script right now, but first we want to make sure that we give it the right permissions to run. Okay, it has the right permissions. I don't know what the password is, so I'm just gonna hit OK. Ooh, I found something already. We're just gonna wait for the process monitor to finish. I swear, when I did this box, I just kind of did the initial shell, and I couldn't really remember much of the privilege escalation part. I was like, yeah, I'll do it later. But yeah. Again, you want to go through everything in this list. It wasn't until probably like a year ago that I realized how important this is, because I remember once getting root access, but not being able to access a root flag because I was inside an LXC container. And I was like, what is that? What? So, oh, wow. There it is. So what really caught my attention in here, this. Uncommon set UID binaries. Nmap would not be an application that has a set UID binary in a regular basis. We want to take advantage of this misconfiguration. So we probably had like a Slacker sysadmin doing, like this. I'm not bashing on sysadmins. They really do a great job. So again, so I'm going to go back to this and I'm going to look for Nmap. There has to be a way to escalate privileges in here. Set UID. There it is. If the binary is allowed to run as a super user by sudo, which we can tell that it's the case in here, It does not drop at the elevated privileges and might be used to access the file system, escalate, or maintain privilege access, which is the case in here. So this is exactly what we're going to do right now. We're just going to copy. And then we're just going to try to execute the shell. Boom. Whenever you see this little pound sign, I'm sorry, what is it with me and the word sound? I can't talk today. I haven't had enough coffee. There it is, root. I am root. So the way I was able to execute this binary, exploit this binary, was just basically by checking what I have here in GTFO bins. And you always want to look at anything that looks suspicious or out of the ordinary. Again, it's not a requirement for you to be an expert, but it is extremely and strongly recommended for you to have a little bit of Linux experience. Why? Because you want to be able to pinpoint what it's unusual or what it's a little bit out of the ordinary, or anything that you could potentially leverage for you to escalate privileges or get an initial shell. So just to kind of continue what I was mentioning earlier, lessons learned in here. Enumeration is always key. Try to gather as much information as you possibly can. And then an initial shell might require several steps. Same with privilege escalation. You all see what I try to do with FTP, that I was insisting that I needed to place a file and execute it on HTTP. But that wasn't really the case because I didn't really have write permissions. And then I saw that Rabbit MQ folder. If I didn't have that cookie, I would not have been able to exploit the Erlang port. So you want to combine a couple of steps and two little pieces of information that I found. Snoop around, exploit, inject, upload, brute force, but always brute force as a last resource. If there is not an exploit, you want to find a way to inject code. You want to be able to see if you're injecting, if you can inject, or if you can put a reverse shell somehow. If you cannot upload it, there always has to be something. If you cannot inject code, you can put a shell. If you cannot put a shell, you can find a username. If you cannot find a username, just any hint. Or you want to be also looking at other ports as well. An off-the-shelf exploit might not always be available. I remember this particular case where I had SMB access and I found an SSH key and I just had to figure out the username. So that was pretty much a customized box. It wasn't an existing application. It was just something that I just kind of had to figure out myself with information that I was given. So don't expect to always have an off-shelf exploit. Understand what the exploit is trying to do and always read the code. You should always do this no matter, like if you're a little bit more experienced or just getting started, this is something important to take in consideration. And then automatic exploitation solutions do not make you a bad pen testing professional. They do not make you lazy. They do not make you unintelligent. They do not make you a slacker. They do not make you gain weight. They do not give you stretch marks. They just, no. Feel free to use them. I know offensive security is a little bit weird about them, but in real life, if I were using a manual exploit versus something that is already existing there, and it's just kind of makes it a little bit more manageable or optimizes it, like if I went for the manual route instead of the automation route, I know my boss would ask me, why didn't you try to automate this? So this is something to keep in consideration. And that's it. Wow.
Oh, awesome. Thanks for that, Melina. We had quite a few people sitting out through that, so I hope everyone had a really good time and enjoyed and also learned quite a lot. There was a few of us discussing in the comments, a couple of comments that popped up. But I think we're kind of over time now, so I think if you have any questions, I would pop them either to Melina on LinkedIn or drop them in the Cyber Lounge. For anyone who just jumped in at the end, the full recording will be made available and we'll send this out to you shortly. But otherwise, I think that's it from me. I just want to say a huge thank you to the audience for watching with us and learning. And obviously a massive thank you to Melina for taking your time.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys for having me here.
All right. Bye.